legacy of women's pro wrestling. You're talking about going back to, say, Mae Young, who's, by the way, we found out that Mae Young is our grandmother.
Really?
Because she gave birth to a hand, which turned into a fist.
There you go.
So there you go. Very good.
All right.
Put on pump.
Yeah.
Will and I kind of,
I didn't think that was going to get on the air. All right, good stuff. All right.
I had nothing to do with that whatsoever, just to let you people know.
But you talk about, like, where it is right now, Shimmer and Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks. In some strange way, does Mae Young, Fabulous Moolah, maybe even Wendy Richter, those cast of characters that propped up, we'll say, women's pro wrestling for all those years and decades, do they somehow, in a weird way, get left behind?
Oh, yeah, they do, and they have, and that's, in a lot of ways, I mean, that's pro wrestling. Pro wrestling has always been based on, the current guys are better than the previous generation.
Right.
It's changed a little bit now because at least WWE has its Hall of Fame and they're recognizing guys, but WWE, which was the most prominent promotion for 20, 30 years now, had a way of, ignoring all other companies. So when Harley Race came in '86, who is this newcomer? They're not acknowledging him as a 7-time NWA World Champion. He's, the king.
Right.
But
right.
They have this way of always using the older guys to put over the new guys, and always, it's Roman Reigns is the best because he beat whoever, right? And women's wrestling isn't immune to that. You look at, people think of Moolah and you think of Mae Young. Moolah, because of her kind of complicated legacy, which we get into in the book, Mae Young is definitely a more palatable choice to name the tournament after rather than the Fabulous Moolah tournament, given a lot of the things that Moolah was guilty of doing or was accused of doing. But there are also people like, Susan Sexton, Judy Martin, Leilani Kai, hundreds of women who are around who people overlook now because nobody was really kind of chronicling their story. Princess Victoria, dozens and dozens of, well, like I said, hundreds of women who have been involved with wrestling. In fact, Cora Livingston was wrestling in the 19-teens, and she's from Buffalo. So she's a Buffalo girl. She went on, she became the first recognized women's champion. And the records were really hard to come by because what legitimate sports writer was covering women's wrestling in 1918? But you can still find little bits and pieces here and there and find that there are all these women who really made lasting contributions to wrestling, not just women's wrestling, but wrestling, whose stories have been, sadly overlooked.
Yeah. How much has the Diva era hurt women's pro wrestling?
I don't think it has really hurt it worse than it's been hurt in the past. Back in the early days, you'd have the women, they would wear a one-piece bathing suit, and a lot of times they'd have to use surgical piping, tubing basically, to make sure that nothing showed that didn't show. So everything stayed in, because if there was a slip, you're in trouble with the athletic commission. Now you're promoting some kind of, we're not doing an athletic show. This is now a sexual thing.
We're not doing porn here.
But I mean, the thing is, realistically, in an athletic competition, you'll see it in WNBA or whatever. You can have, whatever. Clothes move. If you have people wrestling, things can happen. But the women were very, they were told, make sure that this does not happen because this will get us shut down. Right. But at the same time, they would wear, say, white. Mildred Burke would always do this. She'd wear a white one piece because under the arena lights, it was really tough to tell where her bathing suit ended and where her skin began. So if you're in the cheap seats, it kind of looked like a naked woman out there.
There was the one and only time the cheap seats were worth it.
They knew that there was sex appeal. There was a promoter in the book that says he was finally convinced by Billy Wolf to use women on his show. And they had this monster house, and he wrote a letter to her to Billy Wolf, the promoter that we have, saying, "It's true. The public loves the puss." That's right. So it was always there, but the thing is, it's how it's presented. You can either make it kind of a subtext, or you can make it overt. And the Diva era made it overt, and now it's back to the subtext.
Was there any kind of stigma from it, though? To give you an example, Monday Night Raw featured Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson in a bra and panties pillow fight match.
Yeah,
or the Turkey Bowl with the cat.
Yeah,
her top purposely coming off.
And now you're looking at Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks doing the Hell in a Cell.
Amazing match, by the way.
Yeah.
But it was like, you go from that to this, it's like, that's a 180-degree turn, it seems like.
Yeah, well, I mean, the culture has changed a lot. I mean, look at everything that's happened this year, like with the hashtag Me Too movement and everything.
Yep.
People being woke and people being, like things that would have flown, 5, 10, 20 years ago just don't fly anymore with the culture, That affects movies, it affects wrestling, it affects day-to-day life. But yeah, there's certainly a stigma, and you'll find women on the independents today who are trying to be like Sasha and whatever, and they're doing it the right way. And you'll have promoters or fans asking them for nudes, or, hey, do you do bra and panties matches? Do you do this? And I mean, that's still out there, right?
Right.
And it's never quite going away. And the other thing that's kind of murky is customs. I mean, customs is still a big thing. Now, if you don't know what customs is, women wrestlers, very established women's wrestlers, not pin-up girls and models, although they kind of get into it too. There are reputable customs companies where you can book a match, you can order a tape and say, I want to see girl A versus girl B and this kind of match and whatever, and for a certain amount of money, they'll film it and they'll send you that tape. And for the girls, it's a lot of money that they make because, say, Lexi Fife does a customs business. Girls will go down to Shine in Florida. They'll stay for an extra day. They'll do customs at Lexi's place. And each girl makes a couple $100 for a match, right? So say you got 8 matches where you literally don't take bumps, like minimal bumps, and you walk out of there, $800 or whatever, just to hang out with your friends and do a show, whatever. Which is fine. There's an audience for it. It's not sketchy. Lexi runs a very clean thing, but there are other, wild, well, I don't want to say names of anything, but things that have come up in the past where it's just like, okay, Foxy Boxing and Topless, and this is all barefoot, tickle fight, whatever. 99% of the kind of legitimate women wrestlers don't do those. You'll have a few who still do, which kind of muddies the waters a little bit. But for the most part, again, so everybody is still affected by the stigma of what they traditionally have thought of women's wrestling to be. In fact, when I did this book in my day job, I talked to a sales manager and mentioned I had this book coming out. And he goes, so you're a pervert, huh? I'm like, well, I am, but that has nothing to do with the book. Yeah. But I mean, there's still that stigma that's there, and it's going to be inherent in women's wrestling to a certain degree, but it's definitely lesser than it was in the past.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'll bring up a few names to you, and you tell me what they all have in common. Mae Young, Fabulous Moolah, Alundra Blaze. What do you think? 3
women who have never been in my kitchen. There we go.
Winner.
Or in this bar.
Yeah. Mae Young, Moolah, and Alundra Blaze?
Yes.
You're saying? Mae Young, Moolah, and Alundra Blaze. Let me know. What do you...
Hall of Fame.
Okay, yes. Hall of Fame.
China. Will it ever happen?
It probably will happen. I would go with the other question, should it happen? And I don't think it should. I mean,
really?
China she was an attraction. She was groundbreaking. She had a fairly short run. I guess I just don't agree with WWE's Hall of Fame. I mean, again, Buffalo here. Dick the Destroyer Beyer. He's not in the WWE Hall of Fame. Technically, they brought him in as part of their legacy wing, which is a kind of catch-all, cover-all of everybody who contributed. But that's a guy who was a headliner for 30, 40 years. He was one of the guys who pioneered pro wrestling in Japan. He beat Gorgeous George in a hair versus mask match. I mean, Gorgeous George, that's a guy who should be in a Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
China went out there, was protected very well, had 3 years on top, and then was gone. I mean, it's not a Hall of Fame worthy career, in my opinion. Other people will disagree, and the Hall of Fame they inducted The Godfather.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's where if that's Hall of Fame, I guess that's Hall of Fame worthy. But I think she will be. I think that China will make the WWE Hall of Fame for what that's worth. But I think the WWE Hall of Fame needs to get the Destroyer in there right away. So.
Here to that one. Here to that one. Where do you see the women's? Well, I guess we'll call it evolution now. Where do you see it going in the future?
Well, I think that with WWE, it seems a no-brainer that eventually we'll have a women's program, whether it becomes a touring brand or just a TV show. Or I think that's definitely the next step. The talent's definitely out there. If they can find a financial model that works, it makes sense. And I think right now they've kind of proven, well, here's an interesting thing. With the book, I've been touring a lot with this book. I went out to WrestleMania. I've been going to a lot of shows and events selling the book. Available on Amazon for $19.95. But a lot of, I won't say a lot, but I've had at least a dozen younger girls, say 12 to 14, come up and buy the book. And because they are wrestling fans and they want to be wrestlers. And it's an amazing thing to see where they're like, I can't believe that somebody wrote about a history of women in wrestling. I need to read this. And on one hand, I'm thinking, there were some sketchy things that happened, but it happened. It's part of the history of wrestling. Billy Wolf was basically a pimp. Like, he would just date his women and whatever. And there's a lot of stuff, but these young girls are taking a real interest in wrestling, due in part to people like Chyna. So she does have some merit that way, but people like Sasha and everything else. And it's a really cool thing to see. So I don't think that this is a fad. I think that this has legs, like you were saying earlier. I think that this will be something that's going to be with us for a while. Women's wrestling will continue to grow further than it has now.
Now they're pushing the women's evolution. You're seeing like these women that are being promoted as strong people in the ring. On the side, they have a show called Total Divas. Does that contradict one? Does one contradict the other?
No, I thought so. My gut reaction was, this is terrible. I've never watched Total Divas. But I did appear on Total Divas, and the reason,
way.
yeah, I did. And in fact, it just popped up in my Facebook memory feed. If you got me on Facebook, you'll see it today. It popped up today, so I reshared it. Natalia, I know really well. I've known Natty for many years, and Natalia wrote the foreword to the book. And Natty, long story short, of my appearance on there, a friend of a friend had a disabled son. He wanted to go to the wrestling show. I checked with Natty. She got me some tickets and said, can I meet him? I'm like, if it's all right, yeah, that'd be great. So before the show, we go back behind the arena in Buffalo, and Natty comes out, and she's followed by the cameras from Total Divas. And she kind of pulls me aside. She said, I'm really sorry. We just need like some more footage. I hope you don't mind us filming. I'm like, no, it's okay, whatever. So she met this kid, and she was a sweetheart, as she always is, regardless of whether cameras are around. She's just an awesome person. And sure enough, that became my moment on Total Divas.
Wow.
In fact, I was wearing this shirt. We have shows how little has changed. Natty said to me early on when Total Divas came out, I'd asked her about it because she was cast on it. And I thought, man, you're a wrestler. You're from the Hart family. How does it feel to be like sharing the stage with the Bellas and doing this Divas thing? And she said, it's the best thing in the world. She goes, I have more people recognize me from Total Divas than from WWE. I have, I'm making an extra bit of money. I get fan mail. More girls watch it than watch wrestling because it's on the E! Network. She goes, I'm able to reach more people, and for once, the girls are getting more airtime than the guys. She goes, I don't have to worry about, like there's one women's segment on the show tonight. I have to make sure I'm in it. It's a whole women's show, and I get my role. So yeah, the branding's a little bit weird, Total Divas, but other than that, it was one of the things that really kind of helped build an audience that eventually kind of segued into the women's revolution.
Wow. Well, again, your book is available on Amazon.com.
Yes, Barnes & Noble, all fine booksellers.
All fine booksellers around the area.